our next component on that rig rebuild that we've been working on for a couple of days at this point. And this is probably one of the most overlooked parts of a lot of systems, and that is going to be the power supply. Now, this was sent into us by a company called Firepower Technology, but you're probably going to recognize the branding on their box better. So let's get it out of the shipping package first. So this is from Firepower Technology, and what it actually is a PC Power and Cooling Silencer Pro. Now, that's not an inherently new model of power supply, but it is certainly more than capable of what we're planning to do with this system. To be honest, the ATX standards haven't changed a whole ton. So, although you've probably seen, not this one, but the 1050 watt model a couple of places reviewed before, this is still a production model. And it still will be for years to come. This is an 80 plus platinum, 1200 watt, fully modular power supply. It's supposed to be ultra quiet. We're going to see how well that holds up. We get a 10-year warranty from PC Power and Cooling. And let's just take a look at our specs here. So we have a single 12 volt 100 amp rail rated for 1200 watts, 130 watts on the 3.3 and 5 volt rails, 25 amps each, max combined 130, 0.3 amps at minus 12 volts, a whole 3.6 watts, and 3 amps for the plus 5 VSB. We're going to test some of that as best we can. Testing power supplies is something that we will take our best attempt at, but requires a bit of equipment that we don't have here at Pocketables as well. So it features 80 plus platinum, and here's the chart for what that means. We're probably going to be right around the 50% load mark for this particular unit. We're going to have a pair of dual Xeons in there. They're going to be E5 2667 V2s. We're going to have a ton of fans. We're going to have plenty of drives. We're going to have, at least to start, a Quadro P4000. Unfortunately, I haven't been able to get a hold of anyone that even has a graphics card in stock, much less anyone who would consider sending one to Pocketables. And if you are someone who falls into that category, please reach out to me. So 10-year warranty, which is nice. All of your typical standard protections, 135 millimeter ball bearing fan, which is good. So let's go ahead and get it out of the plastic and see what's inside. Now, I mentioned earlier that this is often an overlooked component. People will tend to recycle old power supplies from systems that have been running for a few years and not really think a ton about what kind of power draw their new components are going to need, or even what the quality of the old unit may have been in the first place. And other people will just buy the cheapest power supply with the biggest number, which isn't really what you want to do if you're spending, $500, $700, $1,000 or more dollars on the rest of your parts. You don't want to blow up, a $1,500 RTX 3090, if you can even buy one, by cheaping out on the power supply. So we get a little thank you sticker. We have an instruction manual, which, interesting, it must be some kind of thermally sensitive manual. There's the printing on the front, there's a couple of marks on it like the package was exposed to some heat and the ink changed color. We've got pinouts for all the connectors, which this is good. So very often when you get a modular power supply, you don't always know the pinout of the modular cables. So I'm glad to see that they include pinouts in here. And then we've got instructions on removing the old power supply, installing the new power supply. Make sure to seat the connections, otherwise you might think it's dead on arrival, etc. Alright, so let's look at the accessory package first, which should be mostly cables. We get a nice, beefy power cord. This is our primary ATX cable, which is, there's the connectors for the power supply end, there's the 20+4. We get some nice Velcro straps, and this is something that I commented on with the Fractal Design case itself, is that I don't really like zip ties. I like Velcro, and I was probably just going to use a roll of 1/2-inch Velcro that I use for all sorts of different stuff, but this may save me from using that, and these will have a little bit of additional flair. The reason for that is if you ever have to move a cable, be it replacing the graphics card, changing a drive out, just, you know, adding some extra drives, if you ever need to move a cable over a couple of inches and you've zip tied it somewhere, you're cutting the zip tie now, which has two things going on. Number one, you need a new zip tie. Number two, you have scissors or a pocket knife or, you know, diagonal cutter, something in your case where if there's an accident, you could clip a cable. And I just really don't like that idea. Alright, so here's the first of our PCIe power cables. It looks like this is just straight up set up for dual graphics cards. We've got two 6+2 connectors on one ribbon. I wonder what the gauge on this wire is to figure out the current and carrying capability. Alright, so moving on, I've got something that a lot of new modular units exclude, and this is a Molex power connector. Now, Molex connectors aren't super common anymore on things like drives, but they do show up on various accessories. So a good example of that one item I've actually been looking at for this build is NZXT sells a USB internal hub. And that takes in supplemental power via Molex. And they did just launch a new one that has a SATA connector, but you know, if you have the old one, you're going to be wanting this cable, otherwise you're stuck using a SATA to Molex adapter. So just including this cable, even if most people aren't going to use it, A, for the people that do, means that I don't have to use an adapter dongle, and my cable routing is going to look neater, and B, if I do end up using it, it's going to match all my black cables. I don't suddenly have your typical black, yellow, red connectors that you see on, you know, the standard SATA to Molex dongles that you find. Other examples of stuff that will still use Molex connectors, some really cheap case fans, although I wouldn't suggest those. Some external drive bays will still use Molex power. And then you've got just various other accessories that are older and less favored, but still use it. Alright, so here we've got our first EPS power cable, and this is split to do 4 or 8 pin EPS. We've got a bunch of SATA cables. Looks like we've got 1, 2, 3 separate SATA cables, so that is good. I may end up using all 3 actually. Then we've got a couple more. Let's see, these are PCIe, and last but not least, second EPS lead. And this is actually important for both super high-end motherboards and CPUs, as well as our dual socket system. And we've got some nice little screws, a couple of thumb screw style ones and then some not thumb screw ones, and a PC power and cooling sticker, which I'm going to end up with so many stickers on my case, it's not funny. And finally, we have the main event, the Silencer Pro 1200 itself, which actually weighs too much for me to put on a scale. Say it's like 4.5 pounds. I'll see if I can find a listed weight for it. Might be 5 or 6 even. I can feel the weight shift a little bit. And we are going to open this up and take a look inside, because even though this does have a 10-year warranty, I really want to know what makes it tick. And I see no reason not to, since this is a review unit. I'm not even sure I actually get a warranty. First thing we're going to do is take the fan off, which this is an interesting design choice. I can see already, I want a different screwdriver. I know this might look like the same screwdriver, but this is actually a number 1 Phillips, whereas this one is a number 0. This is by Klein, great screwdriver. This is by Tack Life, basically a direct knockoff of the Klein with a few additional bits included. Also a good screwdriver, because I don't want to strip out any of these screws. Alright, so first thing we see is that this fan has dimples on the blades, which may be a design choice to reduce noise. So that's fairly interesting. And I'm just going to say the hell with it on the warranty sticker and find the screw. Well, apparently it's not cooperating. I get that they make it hard to take these warranty void if removed stickers off because, they're tamper evident. But it just irritates me. They don't actually keep me out of anything. They just slow me down. There we go. There's one. That's what I was looking for. Was the head of the screw, so I could just stab the sticker and open it up. All right. And there is a steel case. Here's our fan. Pretty straightforward 2-pin DC globe fan. The model number is RL4Z B1352512HH, which it said that it's a 135 millimeter fan on the spec sheet. I assume 2.5 is the thickness. 1.2 is our voltage, because it's a 12 volt fan. Not 100% sure what the HH stands for. That might have something to do with the dimples on the fan blades here. And this is a 0.45 amp fan. Alright, so. And also that fan plug is held in with a glob of glue, or epoxy of some sort, I should say. Overall, the construction that I'm seeing at a glance is fairly good. We've got a couple of solder joints that are a little bit more temperamental than I would have liked to have seen, especially on this the distribution side here. We've got some really what look like may have been hot joints, and they don't look bad. I don't think they're going to make it fail, but I would have liked to have seen slightly better joints there. Everything else we're seeing, we've got some relatively large capacitors here, and these are by Nikon, which I think it said on the box. These are all Japanese caps. Grounded to the case is good. Lots of heat sinking in here. Little 4-pin plug marked CN2 and an unused one marked CN3. I do wonder if maybe there was what's the word I want to use here? If there's a different model of this that uses a USB interface for communication with the PC. I'd love to know what that is, because that's actually the one feature that this doesn't have, that a couple of other power supplies in its price point have today, is a USB interface to talk to the PC itself. And we're not going to pull the board all the way out. I don't want to damage anything in here because we are going to use it. But we did want to get a look inside. See that there's no obvious defects in the construction. Our capacitors look good. I'm going to check the size on these. These are marked at 680 microfarad or picofarads at 400 volts. No, those are microfarads. Sorry. I think that these might be slightly undersized just based on the output capacity of this. Is the one comment I remember reading about the 1500. So I have to do the math to find out if those are the same on this. And it looks like our PCB itself has a production date of 2017-11/28, which sounds like forever ago in 2020, but you know, these PCBs may get made in batches of thousands, if not tens of thousands, and then who knows how long the PCB takes to get to where it's going to get assembled, to get these components put in it, to then get the case put on it, and then everything else. So that's it in a nutshell. Other than the lack of USB connectivity, I don't see anything inherently wrong in here. I will note that it is auto ranging for the input voltage, so 100 to 240, 50 to 60. Maximum input of 15 amps, which makes sense. That's all you can get on a US household circuit. And it may come close to that in its low or at its maximum power draw. I'll have to do the math on that and put it up as well. If anyone has any questions about this unit or some of the other units that we did look at, let me know and I will answer them. And hopefully the next time you see this thing, it is going into a case. Slight change of plans. I know I said I was going to put it back together off camera. I've decided I want to finish opening it up and see what the rest of this looks like inside, because I can. So we're going to take off the ground screw. We're going to take off these two here that hold a plate over our modular connectors. Interesting note on the modular connectors, by the way. The ones that are for both the regular Molex and the SATA just say SATA on the top of it. So if for some reason you needed more SATA plugs and you didn't need that Molex cable, you could just buy a new cable and pick up some more SATA. Normally I would have expected those to be labeled something to the order of accessory, but that is not the case here. All right. So we've got 4 screws that hold the board and this plastic protective sleeve in. And at this point, yep, there's all 4. should just kind of tip out. All right, so we've got some heat sinking here to the front. We are labeled. We've got that same. We have a different 2017 date on this printed circuit board. We've got an aluminum plate here that looks like it's for heat sinking or rigidity, and a couple more of these thick, high gauge aluminum traces. And let's get a look at the back and also dump out that screw. All right, so we got some ICs on the back here. Got some through components that are soldered in. Most of this looks fairly clean. I see some evidence that might be surplus solder paste that's on a couple of spots here. Otherwise, this board looks clean. Something's up here. Not 100% sure. But anyway, now that I've got it all the way apart, I'm still pleased with the build quality overall. I don't see anything in here that is surprising to see on a component that I know is mass produced. You're always going to have leftover solder paste. You're always going to have the odd hot joint here or there, unless your process is 100% manual, done by skilled professionals. Something like this, they put the components in and it goes through a wave solder bath, and then they call it good, basically. So that's all there is to it. All right, just wanted to do that. Let's go back to the rest of the video where I didn't open it up yet. I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons as well as anyone who uses our Amazon affiliate links. It is support like that that helps make videos like this possible. I want to thank PC Power and Cooling for sending this in for our video editing rebuild. This is a fantastic looking power supply, and I can't wait to see it in action, and we'll do a follow-up when we have the whole rig together as to most of the components. And also I want to thank Electrix for providing our opening and closing credits. And finally, thank you for watching.